Welcome everyone to the Lincoln City Council meeting of May 24th, 2021. In accordance with LB 898, please be advised that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber by the northwest door. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief period of silent meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item must first register and sign in at the table located in the lobby. The council shall require any member of the public desiring to address the council to identify him or herself, including an address and the name of any organization represented by such person, unless the address requirement is waived to protect the security of the individual. Anyone wishing to speak on an item on the agenda should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, organization, and whether you are speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last Monday of the month, which is today, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor plan for a future agenda. Will the clerk please call the first item of business?
Just a note, we do have sign-in sheets here at front of the podium, so when you do come up and speak, you may sign in at that location as well. For today's agenda, Monday, May 24th, 2021, a memo due to the Memorial Day holiday. City Council will not meet on Monday, May 31st. And our first sections of our agenda is sections 1 and 2.
Is there anyone here that would like to testify on items 1 or 2? Seeing none, may we please go ahead and move on to a roll call.
Item 1A is reappointing Orville Jones to the Lincoln Housing Authority Board for a term to expire July 1st, 2026, introduced by Ward.
So moved. Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Raybold. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please have a vote?
Beckius?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1B is approving an interlocal agreement between the Railroad Transportation Safety District and the city to accept the transfer of funding for the sidewalk construction across BNSF tracks near 6th and Old Cheney, introduced by Ward.
So moved. Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Raybold. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please have a vote, please?
Beckius?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 1C is approving the construction and maintenance agreement between BNSF and the city to construct a sidewalk across BNSF tracks near 6th and Old Cheney, introduced by Ward.
So moved. Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Raybold. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Washington?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Beckius?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 2A, I'm just reading into the record, informal petition to create an alley paving district from X Street and W Street between 34th Street and 33rd Street submitted by Noreen Zaman and Aras Amin Mustafa. We're now in section 4, public hearing liquor resolutions. Item 4A is application of SMG Food and Beverage LLC for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 700 feet by 448 feet at Pinewood Bowl at 3201 South Cottington Avenue on June 11th, 23rd, 24th, and 25th from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. and August 10th from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Is there anyone here who would like to testify on this item? Seeing none, let's move on to the next item, please.
Item 4B is application of catering investments doing business as Yes Chef Catering Company for a special designated license to cover an indoor area measuring 96 feet by 64 feet and an outdoor area measuring approximately 307 feet by 178 feet at 1222 South 27th Street from 3 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Is there anyone here that would like to testify on this item? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the next one.
Items 4C and 4D together, application of Charm LLC doing business as Charm Boutique and Bar for a Class I liquor license located at 200 South 21st Street and the related manager application of Lindsay Teeterman.
Is there anyone here that would like to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next one.
Item 4E is application of Cocky's Chicken and Brew LLC doing business as Cocky's Chicken and Brew for an addition for an outdoor area measuring 15 feet by 31 feet at 5012 North 27th Street.
Is there anyone here that would like to testify on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next one. Oh.
Did you want to testify?
Honestly, my name's Tony. I own Cocky's Chicken and Brew, and I wasn't for sure if I was supposed to be present for the amendment of the liquor license to be able to do the patios. But I wanted to be here if anybody had any questions for me or anything.
Would you like to tell us about your event?
Well, we're building outdoor patio, permanent patio, outdoor seating got real big and everything. So we poured a 700 square foot patio, got approved by Chuck, the fire marshal and stuff, and just going through the process to be able to enhance our business. Because we've done real well here in Lincoln. We've got a site that I'm pursuing in South Lincoln, and then I'm building one right now in Prescott, Arizona. So we hope the brand will stay strong, and we'll always be based here in Lincoln and do what we need to here.
Perfect. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Item 4F is manager application of Heath A. McComber for Raj Lincoln Leasey LLC doing business as Graduate Lincoln located at 141 North 9th Street.
Is there anyone here that would like to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next one.
Item 4G is manager application of Christopher M. Story for Cheddar's Casual Cafe LLC doing business as Cheddar's Casual Cafe located at 5424 East O Street.
Anyone here that would like to testify on this item?
That's me. I just came if you had any questions or anything.
Come on up if you want.
Yeah, I'm Christopher Story. I just got promoted to managing partner in Lincoln, and they're trying to get my name put on the liquor license instead of the old manager.
Perfect.
So-
Does anyone have any questions?
Alrighty.
Thank you so much.
Over here.
Oh, sorry, Councilwoman Washington?
I have one question. Mr. Story, well, first, congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
And when do you plan to take the training?
I've got my registration right here for June 10th.
Perfect. Thank
Alrighty.
you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next item.
I'll be calling items 4H and 4I together. Manager application of Angela L. Coffee for GNS Corporation, doing business as Get and Split located at 951 West O Street, and also the secondary location at 5560 South 48th Street, Suite 1.
Is there anyone here that would like to testify on this item? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the, Councilwoman Raybold?
Well, I was going to move approval.
Okay, let's go ahead and move into the,
Gonna move
Mr.
approval.
Chair, I move approval of items 4A through 4I.
Second?
moved by Councilwoman Raybold, seconded by Councilwoman Ward. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. That ends our liquor resolutions. We'll move on to Section 5, Public Hearing Resolutions. Item 5A is Comprehensive Plan Conformance 21008, application of the Urban Development Department Director for a proposed amendment to the Antelope Valley Redevelopment Plan to add 25th and Vine redevelopment project to include 2 apartment buildings with 36 units, including 6 units of affordable housing on property generally located at 25th and Vine Streets.
Director Marvin?
Good evening, Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. I'd asked for a 2-week delay, and Post is here, and apparently we want to wait for an approval on a PUD item that's being discussed, and we'd need to wait 2 weeks to make sure that we get our parking numbers correct.
Are there any questions for Director Marvin? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ann Post, attorney with Baylor Ebden Law Firm, 1248 O Street, Suite 600. The only clarification I would make is that we're asking for a delay to the next meeting, which is a 2-week delay because of Memorial Day. So I think we have that, but wanted to make that abundantly clear so we didn't add another week in there. So thank you very much. With that, there's no questions.
Any questions for Ann? Seeing?
Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, we'll move on to the next item.
Item
I'm sorry, since it is public hearing, does the public get to weigh in on this item?
Yeah, public gets to weigh in.
Oh, is there anyone else that would like to testify on this item?
And that was a waste of that.
Seeing none, we'll vote on the delay when we get to the voting
Sorry, yes.
session of resolutions.
Yeah.
All right.
Item 5B is Comprehensive Plan Conformance 21009, application of the Urban Development Department Director for proposed amendments to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan and the South of Downtown redevelopment and strategic plan to add the 2 landmark centered redevelopment project to demolish 2 existing buildings, an existing parking lot, and to be replaced with a new 3-story office building with upgraded parking on the property generally located at 1111 Lincoln Mall.
Good evening, Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. I'm here to bring forward a plan amendment, and it affects 2 different redevelopment plans. It affects the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan and the South of Downtown redevelopment plan. The project is located along the south side of Lincoln Mall. So here's Lincoln Mall. It would be in this area between 11th and 12th Street. NEBCO is proposing to replace the buildings on the north half of the block with a new 20 million 3-story office building with parking provided in the lower level of the building adjacent to the NEBCO-owned parking lot on the south side of that block, which would be over here. There's parking as well. On April 28th, the Planning Commission voted 7-0 to find this proposal in conformance with the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. The building will be very similar to the other landmark buildings that are on that block. We're working with the NEBCO team to put together a redevelopment plan that will be brought forward to you at a later date. They have been before the Capital Environs for review of this project, and to date, I think they've been given thumbs up, but they'll continue to work with that group as well to make sure that this conforms with the Capital Environs as well. Bob Caldwell is here to speak to this item as well, so be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman McGinnis?
Real quick, all this is a comprehensive plan amendment. You said comp plan or Lincoln Center redevelopment plan and the south of Haymarket or south of downtown plan.
Correct.
So we're just doing an amendment to the redevelopment.
We have an overarching area, Lincoln downtown area, and every time we bring a project forward, we do a plan amendment to that master plan, so to speak. And what this does is that this folds this into as a project that's within that plan. And in this particular case, it was intentional that we had 2 plan areas overlap each other. There were goals and aspirations within the south of downtown area, and they felt that this was an important bridge into the downtown, so it overlapped this part of the property. But then the Lincoln Center downtown development plan pre-existed that and has been there for a long period of time.
Okay.
Any other questions for Director Marvin? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Good evening, Bob Caldwell, NEBCO, 1815 Y Street. Dan, as usual, stole my thunder. He has given you a description of the project. Just happy to answer any questions. NEBCO is very proud of its work on Lincoln Mall and the support of the Capital Environs Commission, the Planning Commission, and our neighbors. And it'll be a wonderful looking building with a federal government lease for 20 years, 2 labs, and some great office space. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Caldwell? Councilwoman Raybold?
Do you anticipate losing any of the current number of parking stalls?
No, we would add to it. The current buildings that are on site don't have full underground parking. Here, we would add a deck of parking below the building, and then we'd keep our existing surface lot to the south.
Thank you.
Good question.
Councilwoman Washington?
Thank you, Chair. I had 2 questions. One, so I understand the parking, you're going to go below grade on the parking under the building?
Yes.
Or is it going to be a ground floor parking that's
Below grade.
below grade? Okay. And then I know that you're in conversation with the neighbors about construction and how that affects their parking, and I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, they're really great neighbors. We'll meet with them in the morning to talk about a temporary solution during construction, and then look at parking needs in the future.
All right, thank you very
They're
much.
good neighbors, though.
Any further questions for Mr. Caldwell? Seeing none, thank you so much. Anyone else like to testify on this item?
I haven't signed in. Hi, my name is Deborah White, and I live at 1130 H Street, known as Pioneer House, which is one of their neighbors. And I wanted to say I'm not completely opposed to the new building. I think it's great. I just would like to propose a compromise. I currently have a view of downtown and the Pinnacle from my unit, and other residents also have that view. The current west side of the NEPCO building is 2 stories, and now they're planning a 3-story building. I hope the City Council will consider the impact of the building changes on the residents of the south side of the new landmark building. 3 years ago, I paid more for that unit than I should have because it had a view. Well, now that's going to be taken away, and I will lose my view and privacy, and I'm concerned about the decrease in my property value. And I mentioned that I would like a compromise, and I'm not opposed to the new building. I would just like a reconsideration of the height on the west side, that I don't think the building should be higher than what was there in the first place. That's all.
Any further questions for Ms. White? And then can we just get your address also for the record? Oh,
I said it.
Okay,
I wrote
perfect.
it down, and I said it 1130 H.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else would like to testify on this item? Director Marvin or Mr. Caldwell, is there anything you'd like to rebut?
The building as designed matches our other buildings along Lincoln Mall and is in full conformance with the Capital Environs standards, which they've praised the quality of construction and the size of the buildings and the architecture, which is really kind of unmatched in that area. And the building as leased is 3 stories.
Any last questions? Councilman McGinnis?
You're not asking for any height waivers at
No,
all?
we're within all the requirements of the Capital Environs District, and it's matches the building, our other 2 buildings across the street.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Caldwell? Seeing none, thank you so much. Anyone else like to testify on this item? Seeing none, let's move on to the next one, please.
Item 5C is Comprehensive Plan Conformance 21010, application of the Urban Development Director to amend the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to adjust the Block 65 redevelopment project to allow for the division of taxes for a period not to exceed 20 years on property generally located at 200 and 206 South 13th Street and 1318 and 1340 M Street between 13th and 14th M and N Streets.
Good afternoon, Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. I'm here today to introduce a plan amendment to the Lincoln downtown redevelopment plan area. And this is on Block 65. Previously, we had brought forward a project that was proposed by Argent, and that is considered Phase 1. This is considered Phase 2. The Sharp building is the building that you see before you. It's an impressive building. It was built, I think, in the 1920s, and it's a large building, but it is under new ownership, and the renderings that I'm showing you are the renderings that went before the Historic Preservation Commission to get a sense of what types of changes would happen on the building. Most of these are facade changes to fix parts of the building that you're going to have in a building of that age, brick that needs to be repaired. There's some other elements within the building that are going to be brought back up to its original glory. And along with this building is a data center, and this center needs a backup generator. So what we would expect at some point in the future when we come forward here is a redevelopment agreement that addresses the location of that backup generator. It happens to encroach across the property line, and so some of the relocation expense related with the tax increment financing will help address the backup generator, and it will also be used to address alley improvements over off of 13th Street. I can see the attorney representing this project, Mr. Seacrest, is here, so I invite him to come forward if he has anything to say, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions for Director Marvin? Councilman McGinnis?
Yeah, again, this is just an amendment to the redevelopment agreement. This is not approving any redevelopment agreement.
Right. What I would expect, Councilman, is we will come forward with a redevelopment agreement that details the sources and uses of all the tax increment financing. Will detail the conditions of the relocation for the generator, and also will address long-term issues that the building has in terms of being able to provide parking for the employees that work within that building.
Okay.
Those would be the key areas.
Any further questions for Director Marvin? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Anyone else like to testify?
Good afternoon, and nice to see you on the council. This is pretty exciting. My name's Kent Seacrest, today representing the Sharp Building LLC, who is the new owner, the new local owner of the Sharp Building after many years of out-of-town ownership. Located at 13th and N Street on the southeast corner. Lane Supp, who is with me today, is the manager, and we are glad to answer any specific questions about going from 15 years to 20 years of why we need it. I don't want to waste a lot of the council's time if there's not any real explanation that you're seeking other than we need it. The extra 5 years will generate about $265,000, which we have relocation expenses that Dan mentioned of relocating the generator, and that alone is a $446,000 cost to do that. So it's an expense that we don't normally see in a rehab of a building, and so that is one thing. We have asbestos that, compared to a new construction, that puts us kind of in the hole to start with along the way. And we have historical facade restoration that he showed you. The building was built in 1927. It's 94 years old now. And while it looks relatively good from a distance, we do need to bring it up to standards because it's an important downtown building. I'd be glad to go into more detail. We are pledging to do environmental lead on this building, which again is an extra cost. Both the rehab will meet, is pledged to go for lead standard, as well as there's new lead standards on operation and maintenance that we're pledging also to go and hit that target as well. The administration has drafted the redevelopment agreement. We're still working through that process, but it does propose that we have made the case for a 20-year need for tax increment financing. And finally, I just would say downtown's facing some headwinds right now that we aren't used to seeing. We've seen about 1,000 governmental jobs leave the last, or are going to leave or left the last year. We have more vacant office space than I can ever remember. We're about 780,000 square feet of vacant office space. And if you think about it, office space is probably the bedrock of downtown. It supports probably the restaurants that when you don't come downtown, except on weekends, it's the office worker that keeps them going during the rest of the period of time. And it also creates that entertainment and restaurants for visitors out of town. And if we don't keep office strong in downtown, I think it's got a whole sorts of urban design as well as fiscal problems that it generates. And with COVID, we're seeing some real headwinds, and the office is struggling. So that'd be the final thing I would indicate, that why the extra 5 years is needed, because he's going into headwinds here, and I'll let him speak.
Thank you. Kent went through a lot of the negatives for downtown. Some of the positives that I was thinking about, the building's a data center, and we have a data center inside of it. So the building's a key part of downtown. But also the building has suffered from, and it's a little bit of negative, but it suffered from 50% occupancy for as long as I can remember it. Lincoln Benefit Life, I think, was the last large operator or user in the building. So I think that's a real big opportunity for us. But of course, COVID's come around, and I think now's the best time to be investing in downtown. I think the city needs it. We are local ownership, local control. I think that also makes a big difference. I think some of these big buildings have been owned by out-of-state people for too long, and they just see them as an annoying investment and not something that needs to be revitalized. And we do have a pretty good history of public-private partnerships. We worked on the CVS building at 48th and O. That was a pretty big project that I was involved in. We've done a little bit of public art. And of course, recently the Chase, Lululemon, Medita, Post Lofts building. That's all our collaborative effort. So,
any questions?
Councilman Washington?
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming down. Kent, I heard you mention LEED certification, and I'm curious, what level are you going for?
You know, the standard that is articulated has changed. There's a new set of standards, so I don't know if they're using the old platinum, gold, silver, bronze as they used to.
Okay.
On rehab, it's a little different standard than new construction. So they have a rehab standard, and that's what we've articulated in the draft of the redevelopment agreement.
Thank you.
To that point, one other thing that's kind of unique, I do serve on the LAS Administrative Board, and I am very familiar with energy efficiency items, and I went to school for engineering anyway, so a lot of that stuff is ingrained in me. So it's easy to try and follow one of those standards. That's on our list.
Thank you.
Councilman McGinnis?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You said that the LEED standards would be written into the redevelopment agreement at this point?
Yeah, we're pledging to do our very best at that, but we also have to recognize it's a rehab of a historic building, and we got what LEED would like us to do and what historic people sometimes would like us to do, there's some overlap, but there's some gaps. And so we are recognizing that there could be some differences. We want to be sure to hit the historic and then be able to fill in with the LEED aspect, if that makes any sense. We think from a marketability and aesthetics and energy resiliency, the National Register of Historic Places has done a study recently that showed that rehab is much more carbon friendly than new construction. They did a study, new construction can be 30% more efficient because it's new. However, the study showed that it can take 10 to 80 years, depending on how it's done, for a new building carbon footprint to catch up to what a historic building's doing. So again, we recognize that, and so does LEED in so many ways. So I don't want to overstate that there's a major conflict, but there is some tension between historic and LEED. And we want to be sure we hit the historic and then fill in with LEED.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this?
Robert Way, 7120 Adams Street. I might be incorrect, and I should have read more of the briefing materials before I arrived today, but I believe this project is trying to go from the TIF standards for blighted property to an extremely blighted property, with the extended of that 20 years instead of 15 years on the TIF. And the idea that an area of town which has seen so much TIF money put into it, that the city has focused so much on developing, that an area, part of town could have a section that slipped even further into the blighted category, to me makes me question, is TIF working? I mean, if you put decades of TIF money into all the surrounding areas, and then you have this new building, and we're saying, even though it's surrounded by all this other public investment, it's now extremely blighted, it just struck me as odd. And like I said, I'm not fully briefed on this, so I'll keep my comments short, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone, any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next one.
Item 5D is miscellaneous 21003, application of the Urban Development Director to declare the Meadow Lane Shopping Center as blighted and substandard area on property generally located at the northeast corner of 70th and Vine Streets.
Good afternoon, good evening. Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. What you have before you today is a blighting, which is not in the downtown, of an area out along Vine Street and north up 70th Street. This is the Meadow Lane Shopping Center, and the blight study that was in your packet would have had some of these pictures of that particular development. There's a gas station over there, and when this came to our attention, what we felt was the most appropriate comparison was to a project that we did a number of years ago in Piedmont. So we took a center called Piedmont Center that looked a lot like this and went through a process of doing some design review, allocating the tax increment financing, and they came back with a rendering. A lot of times your renderings are usually, really nice. But I think that in the end, this is a picture from Google Maps to show you how Piedmont turned out years later, and it's leased up. I'm familiar with the terms of endearment, so we all know about Kay's Restaurant and all that. But there wasn't a restaurant there that saved it. They brought the case has been brought back in a different iteration. The other businesses out there, they are locally owned, many of them. My daughter gets her fish from the fish store out on Piedmont Shopping Center. So I think that it was a successful project in that area, and we believe that this would be successful on Meadow Lane. Now, one of the concerns that we've heard, we've seen emails from people who love this center, and they certainly support Meadow Lane as a business district. Some of the concerns have been about the gas station on the corner of 70th and Vine, and in one of the iterations of what would be imagined that could happen in the future would be that an apartment building could go on the corner of 70th and Vine. And that is not what is before you. That's not what will be before you. This will mostly be a facade enhancement, improvements along this area. But because the gas station was included in the project area, the Hannah Keelan group went through and tried to imagine what would be an appropriate alternative to the gas station. There were concerns by some residents about would the tenants, like Honest Abe's Hamburgers, would they be able to be retained? And this is an effort to retain the tenants in the building out there, but to make the area more attractive and improve the streetscape views of Meadow Lane. So I think there is an effort to try to retain the tenants that are in the building. There were questions about the condition of 70th Street, conditions of Vine Street, and the traffic that are on those. I think those are related items, but they're not, I don't think that they necessarily are caused by Meadow Lane, the shopping center. They're just exist there as a pre-existing condition to that project. So with me today are the authors from Hannah and Keelan here to address any concerns that you might have on why the language was put in the blight study as it is, but it's there to meet all of the state statute requirements that are a requirement for blighting an area in the first place. I'll stop there and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions for Director Marvin? Councilman Shob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Marvin, you alluded to briefly the state statutes for blighted. Will the developer address those, or would you like to address those?
I think it'd be best for the authors of the study to address those.
I'll stop talking now and come back in a minute. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for Director Marvin? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Can you please say your name and address for the record?
I'm Grant Daly. I live at, we have an office at 3275 Holdridge Street, and we're with Hannah Keelan Consultants today.
My name is Keith Carl with Hannah Keelan Associates, 3275 Holdridge Street. We were commissioned by Hampton Properties to be able to put together a blight and substandard determination study for the Meadow Lane Shopping Center. The statutes you're talking about revolve around the Nebraska Community Development Law, which allows for blight and substandard determination studies to be commissioned for different properties. So we have a couple of different criteria that go into that, substandard criteria and blight criteria, each of which deal with age of structure, condition of structure, public infrastructure information, age of structures, diversity of ownership, things of that nature. So we basically follow the state statutes, the state standards when we put the studies together, and we did find that there was blight and substandard conditions that did exist at the property, which allowed us to put the study together.
Are there any questions? Councilwoman Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of questions, and these come from many of the same people that Director Marvin spoke to in the last few weeks. And so I've just got a couple of questions about the state statute, if you could. Does a property need to meet both the substandard and the blight characteristics in order to be categorized as substandard and blighted?
Thank you for that. There's reasonable and strong presence of factors, and there's a number of different criteria that can determine it to be substandard and a number to determine it to be blighted. A lot of it deals with age and condition of structure. That's kind of the primary component. That's the main component that we follow. Also looking at potential incomes in the area. Like I said, diversity of ownership, and just a number of varying conditions that affect health, safety, and welfare of users of the property. Those that visit it and those that have businesses within that. So there's a number of different criteria, some substandard, 4 substandard and 12 blight, that are identified in the community development law.
That's true, and I looked at those standards, and it looks to me like there's a little bit of double counting happening. When I looked at the substandard criteria, I mean, it says dilapidation, deterioration, age, or obsolescence. And I understand that. And then criteria B says that 100% of those structures are all over the age of 40, so that looks just specifically at age. And that they all have deteriorating driveways and structures with roof surfaces that are prone to leaking, and on and on. Again, it sort of gets to the wear and tear. But the criteria for D under blighted basically says when it says they want to know a detrimental to public health, safety, morals, or welfare is present, and what it summarizes is the top 3 again. And so it sort of feels like, well, it meets criteria D because you've summarized A, B, and C and said it meets D. And so that feels like a double count. And then blighted also looks at deterioration as well. And so I'm like, how many ways can we count deterioration? And I'm just repeating what constituents have asked and have pointed out when they look at those criteria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some categories that, whether they do overlap or not, a lot of those categories can meet the criteria of different blight factors in multiple categories. But the main thing we look at is really the age of structure, and any of the components of public infrastructure and things of that nature that could follow a blight designation. So yeah, there is a little bit of overlap in there, but those criteria can meet multiple categories. That is allowed.
Thank you very much for responding.
Councilwoman Raybould?
Can you tell me, what is the current vacancy rate in the shopping center?
Vacancy rates, that would be a good question for the property owners, but there are a number of retail bays or office bays in there that are vacant. I'm not quite sure what the exact number of that is, but that would be information that the property manager would be able to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I have a very simple question. Can you explain where the term blighted comes from? Is that a city word or is that a state word? Can you just kind of explain where that comes from?
Yeah, it's a general term just for understanding areas that have distressed properties or have been through the course of time over a number of different years and decades. So it's not necessarily a term that City of Lincoln came up with or State of Nebraska came up with. When the law was created, that was the term that was designated.
So the state of Nebraska came up with that term. I know that people are pretty protective of their neighborhoods, and when the term blighted kind of gets thrown around, it can kind of make people feel like the city's implying something that it's not. So it's helpful to know that that comes from state language. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to testify on this item?
Good evening. My name is Ann Post. I'm an attorney with Baylor Evnen Law Firm, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Hampton Enterprises. With me is Michelle Keogh. She is the president of properties for Hampton Enterprises. And so we're here today in support of this blight designation, to support this. And the reason that we are supporting this is it's our first step to obtain tax increment financing to allow a really substantial investment in the redevelopment of the Meadow Lane Shopping Center. The Meadow Lane Shopping Center was built in the 1960s. It's been continually repaired and maintained, but it is at a point where it's going to need a significant investment in order to keep it as a center of neighborhood activities, in order to keep tenants there, in order to keep it as a desirable place for tenants to locate. And so that's why Hampton is before today. That's why they initiated this process to obtain tax increment financing for this redevelopment project. Director Marvin gave you the great example that is Piedmont that we really hope to emulate with this project. I have some elevations to kind of give you an idea of what we hope to be able to bring with this project. Again, these are elevations, so these are plans at this point. We don't have a redevelopment agreement in place, but this is what we hope to bring to the area. You'll note that the work includes resurfacing columns and exterior walls with stonework, painted brick, metal panels, a nice stone surface sign on this side, removal and replacement of awnings and soffit, improved lightings, new roof parapets, and replacing sidewalks. So we are aware that there is kind of some confusion about the scope of this project. It's not that, since that came to our attention, Hampton has made every effort to clarify that and reach out to neighborhoods and those people with questions. We worked with the planning department to put out a statement to clarify things. We put out another letter to anyone whose information we received to clarify that apartments are not part of this project. And we also were able to meet with the board of directors of the Meadow Lane neighborhood to present there. I know they invited anyone who was interested in attending, so we could again clarify just what our intent was with this project. That there is no residential included in this, either on the corner with the service station or above the strip mall, and that it is just a renovation of what's there. There's no change to the traffic flow. There's no change to the plans. And what I'd like to emphasize is that this is an effort to keep tenants there. Right now, that has been part of the discussion in order to keep tenants there is whether this will happen. So tenants are aware that there has been some proposals, that Hampton knows that there is a need to make improvements to the center in order to keep them there. This is a plan to stay ahead of it, to allow Hampton to renovate the space, keep tenants there before it falls so far into deterioration that it's just a lot harder to bring back. And so with that, we're aware that there are tenants, or there are people in the area that are not happy with the definition of blighted and substandard. Those words have negative connotations, and we understand that, and we understand their concerns about using those words. We would prefer not to use those words. Hampton has owned the property, Hampton has maintained the property, but unfortunately those are the words that the legislature requires in order to step through this process and to obtain this funding that is specifically there. I mean, it's specifically available to assist with redevelopment projects and to help keep our developed areas attractive and help attract more resources to those areas. So with that, we ask for your support of the blight designation, and I and Michelle are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? Oh, Councilwoman Raybold?
Michelle, could you answer the question about the vacancy? How many of the bays are vacant at this point in time? What's the percentage?
There are 3 vacancies right now that add up to approximately 3,200 square feet, and it's a 64,000 square foot center. When the QP Ace Hardware sold and exchanged owners, we had to agree that we were going to update the center within a certain amount of time, and their rent is dependent on us doing that, and they occupy a huge portion of the center, as you probably know. But right now, approximately 3,200 square feet.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this item?
Hello, my name is Robert Way. My address has been read into the record. TIF, and I'm here to say, I think this one's a good idea. I grew up in that neighborhood. I remember there used to be a Ben Franklin in that strip mall when we were kids, and it used to be it's a place I remember from my childhood. It's just a safe, nice place that was good for the neighborhood. And I think they're trying to do something with a public program to keep it the same sort of neighborhood it's always been, which is, it's never been a rich neighborhood. It's been a solid neighborhood. It's been a neighborhood you could feel that everybody was working together. And if the city needs to make a decision here to give them the tools to work together, and that it's also going to be using this tool in a different area of town, an area of town I would like to see more effort put into, I think this is good use of TIF. So I would support this motion.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for coming down. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next one.
Item 5E is appeal by the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Planning Department's approval of use permit 103C to amend the Planning Commission's resolution PC 01750 to allow for up to 250 multifamily dwelling units or 110,500 square feet of commercial floor area on Lot 3 and up to 513,821 square feet of total commercial floor area on property generally located at North 27th Street and Enterprise Drive.
Wow.
I wonder where they're hiding.
Members of the council, Tim C., Assistant City Attorney for the City of Lincoln. I'll be brief, but this is before you on an appeal by the city from the Planning Commission action. There was a motion to amend adopted by the Planning Commission that, as we looked at it after the hearing, appeared to bind this council probably in ways that are probably invade on the purview of the council with respect to a related item. And so because of that condition, we've put together a new resolution that I think corrects that and simply makes the street and alley vacation that goes with this a contingency for final platting 3 of the lots, as opposed to tying the financial aspects of that street and alley vacation to this use permit. So that's why we're here tonight. I can try to answer any questions you might have. I know the developers here to present this. So I don't want this to come off as the city is opposed to this project or the city is opposed to anything that was done. It was just as we looked at this after the Planning Commission hearing, it became apparent that we needed to correct this, and that's why it's before you tonight.
Is there anyone that has any questions? Councilman Beckius?
Thank you. Mr. C., I'm assuming the city and the developer are in agreement with...
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Councilman McGinnis?
So we are to vote in favor of this appeal?
Yeah, so the appeal, when the appeal comes to you on these items, it's as if it's coming to you for the first time. You are taking action as if it's an original application that's in front of you. So it's not that you are reversing or affirming the decision of the Planning Commission. When it gets appealed to you, it's as if you get to look at the Planning Commission as a recommendation, but your votes are based on the application.
Okay.
Any further questions? Councilwoman Washington?
Will we see pieces of this project come before us subsequently?
The street and alley vacation will be following, but by taking this up tonight, there is some things they can do with the property pending the outcome of that street and alley vacation.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln, on behalf of the Lerner Company. With me today is Jay Lerner. I'd like him to address a couple points, and then I'll get into the meat of the argument here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, or good evening, I guess. Good evening. J.R. Lerner, 10855 West Dodge Road, Omaha, Nebraska. Oddly enough, I'm president of the Lerner Company, who is developing this project in North Lincoln. Also, just want to introduce you to two of my cohorts. Rick Quinlevin is president of the Lerner Company, and Ben Meyer is a vice president. And Brad Marshall is also here with us from Olson Engineering. Just a little brief background that 20 years ago, we bought a piece of property at 27th and Superior, and we opened the first phase of that project in 1993. And so that project has done extremely well over the years. We don't own it anymore. We sold it in 2007. But it turned out to be a great project. And then in looking at what we're doing now, it's the next piece of property to the north. I mean, there's a Pinnacle Bank there, there's a Haas Tires, there's a little vacant lot, but this is 50 acres in front of the high school. That's a huge, or a huge piece of property that a development could be on. So we looked at this. Part of the problem over the years, and a lot of people have tried to develop this, is the grading is a real issue. When we look to try and do a project that was an integrated project on one elevation, the cost of the grading would have been 1.5 times the cost of the land purchase. So obviously that wasn't happening, and that's also the reason that I think it hasn't been developed over the years. We found a way to do a 2-level project that we're very excited about. Just one other thing, FYI, that in 2020, Lincoln Crossing was the #1 ranked traffic shopping center in the state of Nebraska. And that was 5.06 million visits. That was #1 in 2020, and we're really happy to hear that, and obviously happy for what we're trying to do next door. So I want to thank you for hearing us. I can tell you we've had a great relationship with the planning department. Dan Marvin, the director of urban development. We need to move this thing forward as quickly as possible, and that's why we're here tonight. So thank you very much, and it's nice to meet you all.
And I just have a couple points I want to make. I don't want to get into the habit of appealing approvals from the Planning Commission to the City Council. That's not my usual practice, but we wanted to clarify one point in the record. Originally, this use permit 103B was approved 20 years ago, June of 2001, and approved 705,000 square feet of development at this site. And it sat vacant for 20 years. And if you've been by it and you recognize it, the site is grade challenged. It's the area along North 27th Street is probably 50 or 70 feet in spots higher than the area on the east side of this property. And the east side of the property is directly adjacent to and borders North Star High School. And this property, I know a lot of developers have looked at it and haven't been able to come up with a plan to get it done effectively, cost effectively. And the plan that the Lerner Company arrived at, really, as Jay mentioned, bifurcates it and treats the western portion adjacent to the street much differently than the eastern portion. And the western portion would be developed into typical retail development, not big box, but small neighborhood services and other small retail services. And then the eastern portion adjacent to the North Star High School would be then developed into either 250 multifamily dwelling units, or approximately 110,000 square foot of retail. There's a lot of interest in the multifamily site, and we think that's a good location for it. That way the two sites are not directly tied together, but they can be separated. And the reason that we're in front of you today is that the Planning Commission had final approval authority for the use permit. They made a recommendation on the street and alley vacation on one single issue, is that one of the conditions of approval is that there's a church located north of this property, and we have to grant them an easement to use our property for access to a light that's going to exist at this intersection. And your ordinance that deals with street and alley vacation requires either the payment of the proper price from the petitioner or requires an exchange of property. And we have the support of the Planning Department and the Lincoln Transportation Utilities Department to exchange the right-of-way, which the LTU actually asked us to take because there's excess city right-of-way here and they don't want to maintain it, so we're going to include it in the property. So that will be considered the exchange for purposes of your code. And originally, the conditions of approval of the use permit presumed that the street and alley vacation was going to be approved, and that hasn't come before you, but hopefully that will be coming to you in the next week or 2 or 3. I know you're not meeting next week, so in the next couple of weeks, I think that will be in front of you. So that's why we're in front of you, just to consolidate and make sure that the City Council understands that you have the final authority not only on this use permit, but also on the street and alley vacation. And it does have that condition on the street and alley vacation be conveyed to the property owner in exchange for the grant of the easement to be used by the property to the north. And with that, I would ask for your support of this matter, and I'd be happy to answer or try to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions? Okay. Councilman McGinnis?
Well, one, I want to thank Lerner Company for coming down and putting together a good project. And like you said, maybe finally get something going on this piece of ground. I was around when they first put this together in the group of Ridge Development and how this was going to be the next big shopping center. But the way retail has changed over the years, it really needed a fresh look at it. So appreciate all the look.
This is a very good project for the city of Lincoln to really put it to a productive use of property that's sat idle for 20 years. And I'm not aware of any other property that's approved for this number of square feet that has sat idle for 20 years.
The plans, it goes all the way down to Folkways. Do they have different plans for the property down on Folkways, or is it?
And there's one pad, at least one pad south of Folkways, but otherwise all of the property north of Folkways up past Enterprise are included in this project.
Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so
you.
much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item?
Good evening, council members. My name is Vern Schulte, and I'm here on behalf of Crossbridge Christian Church, 2800 Crossbridge Place here in Lincoln. As Mr. Houston mentioned, we are that church that is below grade of this project, so you can imagine why we're here. We understand those grading challenges. We had to face them ourselves when we built the church right around 20 years ago. Our concerns are more about trying to preserve our interests and preserve our landscaping, if you will. We addressed with the Planning Commission our drainage issues that we thought may come up, and as well as you might imagine, there's a roughly 60-foot retaining wall that separates the north part of the development and the south part of our property. And one of the things that we wanted to definitely address was ensuring that some type of geotechnical study was done, as was testified to in the Planning Commission. If you read the Planning Commission's report, you probably noticed there was one individual that testified in opposition. Well, that was me. However, we are not testifying in opposition necessarily. We want to make sure we're 100% clear that we are behind this project. We support this project in the fullest, but again, in that realm, we want to make sure that our interests are protected as well. In the Planning Commission discussion, if I could, right, there we go. There is said retaining wall between the projects, and one of our concerns was, I have to admit, I have to apologize for the quality of photo. It was taken by me. As I got to church Sunday, that's not just one front end loader, there's actually another front end loader on the backside. So our concern is that there's already dirt work being done and equipment being run very close to the property line, right above the retaining wall. And we have yet to see any type of geotechnical study for us to be able to help mitigate anything on our behalf that we might be able to help protect that retaining wall. Again, that retaining wall, if that would fail, that doesn't obviously help our property, but it doesn't help the development either. We have made a request for that geotechnical study if one has been performed, and we've not received one yet. But again, we are 100% behind this project, and I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for coming down. Anyone else like to speak on this? Yep, come on up.
Just to add. I want to make sure I was coming up at the appropriate time. Brad Marshall with Olson of 601 P Street, Suite 200. We definitely have had some conversations with Crossbridge. The area directly, basically south of the church, is a priority area for the grading work, and so there is probably a tremendous amount of dirt moving in that area right now. The retaining wall is of significant interest for everybody to make sure that we take care of it and no damages are done in that area. But the retaining wall being right on the property line is something we are dealing with probably on a daily basis, with making sure that our staff for Olson is representing Lerner in this case on observation and testing of the materials that are moving around in that area. So first, in the question of the grading preceding what is before us today, the plans actually came before and went through Planning Department on an administrative amendment. So we met with the planning, LTU, watershed management approximately 7 months ago, and came up with a plan to precede the full amendment with grading plans and drainage studies. So that did happen. That was approved, and then subsequently grading plans were submitted to LTU and watershed for final approval, and so we have obtained that and moved forward with the grading operations that is currently happening. No geotechnical study has been performed, nor, I think maybe there was some confusion about what was actually going to happen there. So we weren't going to go out and do borings and study the wall, but in other words, we were doing minimalization around the wall so we were not impacting it. Drainage, for instance, drainage is being captured on site and sent to the east, which is not then going north to the church and then moving to the creek, which is to the east. And grading operations, we're not adding 10 feet of fill adjacent to it, as opposed actually we're moving a swale behind the retaining wall so that drainage is captured and no fill is directly going on to surcharge or add additional weight to that retaining wall that is currently there. There will be earth moving equipment on a daily basis as it around that area. It's just nature of the beast of getting construction work completed. So hope I answered all the questions that were brought up there, and if I didn't, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Councilwoman Raybould.
Brad, could you talk a little bit about the assurances that you have made to the church to the integrity of the retaining wall, that the dirt moving will not harm the wall in any way, shape, or form, or what representations have you made to the church so that they feel better about the work that's ongoing and that the wall will be protected?
Well, we have put together plans and contractor and coach the contractor with safety and so forth as to what could happen. I mean, the work going on in the area, no guarantees, I suppose. Accidents happen and so forth, but we're taking every precaution that we can put in place from a safety perspective to prevent anything to happen.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to testify on this? Okay, thanks so much. We'll move on to the, yes, Councilman Shob?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the questions of the Planning Department Director, Mr. Carey.
Sure.
Good evening, David Carey, Director of the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street.
Mr. Carey, thank you for coming forward. I appreciate your expertise in this matter. I'm not a planner. I'm hoping you can help me out with a few things. First off, it was unusual to appeal an approval-ish thingy. How do you feel about that? That's uncommon and
Yeah, it is uncommon, and we certainly want to avoid doing those things. But as Tim C. explained at the beginning, it's a mechanism for us to address the issue that was at hand in dealing with the access and the right-of-way, kind of setting those aside so that the use permit could go forward for your action and approval.
the thing that I'm really concerned about is Reverend Schulte, Pastor Schulte, Mr. Schulte, he's concerned about some issues. And what role would the city have in giving him any assurances on that? The developer's already made some assurances and promises. What role do we play in that?
Well, I think what I would say to that is that we have been part of the process of getting to this point already, and in a general sense, the earthwork that's happening out there is following the protocols that we have in place for review and approval to move forward with these actions. I think we want to just remind everybody that this is an existing use permit, and so it's not a brand new proposal coming forward. This is an amendment to the use permit.
Something's already been approved.
To basically update what the project will have in it. So the ability to do the earthwork is already in place because they have come forward under the existing use permit to basically show us what grading is going to happen. And so those reviews have already happened.
Okay.
So I would say we're kind of dealing with this as kind of a typical type of project, with the exception that they're coming forward now with amendment to the use permit so that they could do the type of project that they want to do.
I think that helps me. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman McGinnis?
What's the setbacks on a B2 side yard, or how close are they going to be able to build to the wall?
I'd have to look at that. I don't have that information right in front of me, but I can follow up with you on that, unless the applicant has that information available.
I do believe that there was a waiver for the side yard on that particular one. Normal is 20 feet. In this case, there's actually several easements in place that would prevent any type of building structure to be placed there. In particular, there's going to be electrical LES utility easement, and in addition to that, there's a storm sewer easement that buffer, basically, that would prevent that, I believe any type of structure to be within 15 feet of the retaining wall.
Okay.
Any further questions for Director Carey? Sure.
Rebuttal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Jay Lerner again. I just want to let you all know that we're as concerned about the wall as the church is. Because if something happens to that, we're affected in a way that's not good for either us or the church. So we've been very cautious about that. The building is not going up against the property line. The swale is going in there. That water that used to go north is now gonna head further east and then south. So we're aware of that, and we want it to be right, because the impact on that, something happening to that wall, would be just as bad for us as it would for the church.
Mr. Lerner, may I ask you a question? If something does happen to the wall, is it the responsibility of the developer to repair the wall or make it right, or what are it's not very clear on the discussions that have been going on. Who would be responsible? Is it the contractor that has the heavy loader there, and if the wall gets gouged, or the structural integrity is damaged? I mean, who's responsible? Because I don't think it's not very clearly established.
I think
got an attorney right here.
As far as I'm concerned, if we damage it, that's our problem.
Okay.
Now that we're not looking to damage it, and we think what our grading plan, which has been submitted and approved by the department and approved by the commission, is what we're gonna follow through on. Now, if something happens when a grader goes over there and knocks over part of the wall, that I would expect we would take care of that.
Thank you.
I'm not going to add to that.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
I'm sorry, we can only speak once, and then once we have the rebuttal, then we end public testimony. Unless any of the council members have any further questions. Since we just got done with rebuttal, we'll move on to the voting session.
Item 5A is Comprehensive Plan Conformance 21008, application of the Urban Development Department Director for the proposed amendment to the Antelope Valley redevelopment plan to add 25th and Vine redevelopment project to include 2 apartment buildings within 36 units, including 6 units of affordable housing and property generally located at 25th and Vine Streets. Introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by McGinnis, and then we were asked to do a delay, so I'd ask for a motion to do a 2-week delay for our next meeting.
So moved.
Move that. Are we going to ask for public hearing on the next meeting? We had a public hearing today.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and do public hearing.
We'll leave it open for public hearing
Leave it open for public hearing.
and vote next week, or next meeting.
2 weeks.
Next
2
meeting.
weeks.
Next meeting on June 7th.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Washington, seconded by
Second.
Councilman McGinnis. Any discussion?
This is
Seeing-
just on the delay.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Can we please do a vote?
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, so since that will get delayed to our next meeting with continuation of public hearing, we'll move on to the next item.
Item 5B is Comprehensive Plan Conformance 21009, application of the Urban Development Department Director for proposed amendments to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan in the south of downtown redevelopment and strategic plan to add the 2 Landmark Center redevelopment project to demolish 2 existing buildings, an existing parking lot, and to be replaced with a new 3-story office building with upgraded parking on the property generally located at 1111 Lincoln Mall. Introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Introduced by Ward,
Second.
seconded by Schob. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
Raybold,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 5C is the Comprehensive Plan Conformance 21010, application of the Urban Development Director to amend the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to adjust the Block 65 redevelopment project to allow for the divisions of taxes for a period not to exceed 20 years on property generally located at 200 and 206 South 13th Street and 1318 and 1340 M Street between 13th and 14th M and N Streets, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second?
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Raybold. Any discussion? Councilman McGinnis?
Yeah, I'm going to approve this application because it's basically changing just the comp plan or the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan. But I'm very interested in see what the redevelopment agreement will be put together between the city and Mr. Supp, and see where a lot of the tax money will be going and what the future use of the building will be at that time.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's go and do a roll call vote.
Beckius,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 5D is miscellaneous 21003, application of the Urban Development Director to declare the Meadows Lane Shopping Center as blighted and substandard area on property generally located at the northeast corner of 70th and Vine Streets, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Schob. Any discussion? Councilman McGinnis?
Everyone talked about, being a blighted area, but when you start running into these small, old neighborhood centers, I think the biggest part of the blighted area is how small the area of land is and how you redeveloped an urban neighborhood center is nothing that's been easy. We were involved in the Piedmont project, which worked out really well, but you're talking very small bays, and they weren't set up for today's modern retail, but that turned out great. And what we did is we brought in a lot of new local businesses that could come in and start their businesses in those smaller neighborhood centers and these small core centers. And I really see a revitalization for a lot of these. I know Omaha's doing a lot of them, and they're working out great. So I think this will be a great project. And again, with Hampton Development doing it, they're great stewards. They've owned the building, and they'll continue to own it for a long time. So I think this is a win for everybody.
Any further Councilman Washington?
I just wanted to add that I agree with Councilman McGinnis on this one, that even though the term blighted and substandard can be unsettling in a really stable neighborhood, that this kind of investment in these projects really actually end up helping the neighborhood greatly, and it's worth the investment of tax increment financing in these projects. So I support this one.
Any further discussion? Councilman Shob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with what my two council members have said. I think we as a community need to have a longer, honest discussion about the word blighted. It's one of those incendiary words when we hear it and people say, oh my God, my property values are going down. And then a couple weeks later, I get an email from them going, oh my God, my property values went up. So we need to have a long, hard discussion about what we're doing to make our community better. And this is one of the tools we have to do that, and it's a good tool. Good use of a good tool.
Any further discussion? I would just add that since this is in Northeast Lincoln, I do appreciate the investment that's being made in the Northeast Quadrant and in the Meadow Lane neighborhood, and the fact that this will revitalize and attract and retain businesses in the Meadow Lane Shopping Center. I think this is going to be a good thing, and I'm thankful that the city's getting behind it and we're using this tool. Can we please do a roll call vote?
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 5E is appeal by the City of Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Department's approval of use permit 103C to amend the Planning Commission's resolution PC 01750 to allow for up to 250 multifamily dwelling units or 110,500 square feet of commercial floor area on Lot 3 and up to 513,821 square feet of total commercial floor area on property generally located at North 27th Street and Enterprise Drive. Introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Raybold. Any discussion? Councilman McGinnis?
I don't know why I'm so talkative tonight, but again, this is another good
That's
project.
a chair anymore.
Yeah. Having Mr. Lerner in and working on this project is a good deal for us. I remember a long time ago, he sat down with a friend of mine and Mr. Cady and Mike Cady and Harley Bear and put together a little deal for that area that really transformed that North 27th Street area. So I'm looking for the same results here. So, yeah, it is a high bar.
He said, I guarantee it? So what did he say?
Yeah, he's going to guarantee it.
That's what I meant.
Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, let's please do a vote.
Beckius,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right, we'll move on to the next section, please.
Thank you.
Section 6 is our public hearing ordinances, second reading and, public hearing and action, ordinances, second reading and related resolutions. I apologize, we are in section 6. Ordinances, second reading and related resolutions. Item 6A is approving a real estate purchase agreement between the City of Lincoln and VH Properties LLC for the sale of city-owned property generally located at 1301 South 120th Street.
The short straw, huh? The evening meeting.
Good evening, council members. My name is Donna Garden. I'm the Assistant Director of Utilities for Lincoln Transportation Utilities, and I'm usually not in front of you to sell real estate. This is an unusual one. This was a property we purchased as part of the Stevens Creek Trunk Sewer Project. If you take a look at this property on the monitor here, you'll see that the green shaded area is the right-of-way area. that is being created for the trunk sewer line and also for a roundabout that ultimately will be in this corner. You'll see the green line there is the actual trunk sewer. It is a 36-inch line. It's a large piece of pipe. By purchasing this property, we were able to save about almost $214,000, and that included not having to bore this pipe through this property. But I will tell you the sales price doesn't reflect it. We purchased it at $300,000 and we sold it for $230,000, but in the end we came out ahead by about $114,000. And at that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next one.
Item 6B is approving an agreement for tower space and appurtenances. Excuse me, I struggle with this word every time. Appurtenances. Sorry,
Close enough, keep going.
Okay.
Close enough, keep
Okay,
going.
between the city and New Singular Wireless PC LLC to occupy and use certain city-owned parcel of real property and tower generally located at 2201 South 84th Street.
Tim C., Assistant City Attorney. What you have before you is, as Tony said, a cell tower lease for property at approximately 84th and South Street. If you can imagine the Fire Station 2 that's at that location and the water tower immediately to the west, there's a cell tower that sits between those two. This is a lease for space on that cell tower. The lease is for a period of 10 years, initially with 3 5-year extensions. There is a fee that's paid, and with that, I think I would just open it up to any questions rather than getting into.
Are there any
all the
questions?
details.
Are there any questions?
Are they there now? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we have council.
I believe I believe this is a new user on that.
This
on that
is a
tower.
new user. Is this a co-locate on that tower?
I'm not sure exactly all the specifics on that. I can get that information before the voting session.
Councilwoman Washington?
I had a question about, I'm reading through the agreement, it sounds like Singular, well, I couldn't tell if Singular and AT&T were related to each other, if they were the same company, or if they were different companies.
I think New Singular Wireless PCS is acquiring the lease on behalf of AT&T, but AT&T will actually be the user of the antenna.
Thank you, because I noticed in the additional 5-year increments, we had to get permission from AT&T in order to move forward with that. And then I was curious about whether or not this was, if they were joining someone or if they were going to allow a joining to this cell tower.
I will get that information before the 7th.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item?
Good evening. My name's Steve Ward. I'm with Ward Development. I'm here representing New Singular Wireless. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. This is a new co-location for New Singular Wireless, who's the subsidiary of AT&T Mobility. That's the LLC that they use to do their leasing work. It's an existing tower. It was built originally by U.S. Cellular. Cricket at one time was on the tower. Cricket has left. AT&T is taking the spot that Cricket was on. There's no expansion to the tower or expansion to the compound.
Any questions?
Nicely done.
Thank you. Sorry for the casual.
Nicely done.
Anyone else like to speak on this item? Seeing none, let's move on to the next section.
Section 7, public hearing and action on ordinance's second reading and related resolutions. I'll be reading items 7A and 7B together. Change of zone 21010, application of LS Commercial Developer LLC from a B3 commercial district and R4 residential district, all to R6 residential district on properties generally located at 2716 and 2718 Star Street and 1420 North 27th Street. And the related development and conditional zoning agreement between City and LS Commercial Developer LLC to allow development of a multifamily housing on the properties generally located at 2716 Star Street, 2718 Star Street, and 1420 North 27th Street.
Name's Dan Indian, 2210 North 98th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska 68505. And I'm here just to take questions if anyone needs it. Currently, we did, I met with planning commission in April, and we had a unanimous decision approval on changing the zone to the R6. I'm just here to see that that's okay with you guys to continue the work, so.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to the next section.
We can vote on these items.
Yes, should we go ahead and vote on this one?
Oh, let's do it.
Okay.
Item 7A is change of zone 21010, application of LS Commercial Developer LLC from B3 Commercial District and R4 Residential District, all to R6 Residential District on properties generally located at 2716 and 2718 Star Street and 1420 North 27th Street, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Councilman Shob, seconded by Councilwoman Washington. Any discussion?
So why did we delay this?
So that our new council member could vote.
Thank
So
you.
our new council member could vote and have a public hearing.
Thank you. Short memory.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and do a vote.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 7B is approving a development and conditional zoning agreement between City and Ellis Commercial Developer LLC to allow development of a multifamily housing on the properties generally located at 2716 and 2718 Star Street and 1420 North 27th Street, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Shob, seconded by Councilman Washington. Any discussion? Councilman McGinnis?
I have a quick question. I couldn't pull it up. It didn't seem to the attachment, but I guess Dan isn't here anymore. Marvin, on this is the redevelopment agreement, correct? Is this the zoning change?
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. This is a zoning agreement that's related to the project. And it mostly just, well, it does two main things. It requires the paving of the alley because it's going to have more activity with these units on there. And it requires the site to be developed in general conformance with the site plan as presented with the zoning change. So it's a zoning agreement that goes along with the zoning change.
Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Beckius,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Okay. That ends our public hearing. Next section is 8, resolutions. First readings are items 8A through 8K. Ordinances first reading and related resolutions are items 9A through 9F. And our pending list is items 10A through 10C.
We'll now move into the public comment section of tonight's meeting. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at the open microphone session. Individuals are allowed a total of 5 minutes to speak, regardless of the number of topics. For the month of May, open microphone session today is May 24th. Please state your name and address for the record and sign in when you come up. Is there anyone that wishes to speak at open microphone tonight? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Matt Brethauer at 702 North 30th. And I just come to see if this is where you need to come to. I know texting and driving is a secondary offense. I wanted to see how it could be moved to a first offense. I can sit on my front porch or drive anywhere and I can see multiple people texting, driving, looking at their phone, going into somebody else's lane, driving down the center of the lane, running stoplights, stop signs. And I just want to see how we can move this forward to make it a first offense instead of a secondary. I mean, I have a bike, a motorcycle, and I've had to do numerous times where people are on their phone. I had to, swerve because the people are on their phone. It's not just a young age or the old age, it's all ages, all ethnic groups. And it's alarming, you know, I can sit in front of my house and watch 10 cars and 7 of them are on their phone and they have to stop within a block. So I just want to see how we can move this to a first offense instead of a second. So,
Thank you so much for coming down.
thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak at open microphone?
Good evening. Roy Helm, 2750 South 13th Street, and I don't represent anyone but myself. This is quite a change. Different people are sitting in different places. Councilman Becky is welcome. Thank you. And congratulations. I guess I wanted to start out by saying at the last open comment, I did a reading, and my intention was not to be offensive, and it was just a general statement, something that I've found entertaining, and it really wasn't directed at any one individual or organization. It was just a statement, so it wasn't, again, intended to be offensive, but if it was taken to be directed at an individual, if someone received it that way, then I guess that's something they would have to look inwardly and question why. I have nothing to complain about. We're in a wonderful situation. I mean, the tape's gone from the chairs, so hopefully that will no longer be a part of our conversation here. But I think, again, I want to thank all of you, our city, specifically Pat Lopez, for having the courage to keep us safe and weather the storm of all the hateful commentary. And I mean, and here we are today. It's been a long haul, but we're able to be here without masks, and things are getting better, and hopefully they'll continue in that direction. And I think it's a good positive way to start the summer. So again, nothing to complain about. I just want to offer my appreciation and sincere thank you to everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council?
Hello, my name is Robert Way. My address is 7120 Adams Street. I got the memo about the mask. I'm still waiting on my second shot so I can get it, so I can follow the rules.
Thank you.
So that's why I'm still wearing it. I wanna not have a mask, but I gotta do all the steps. Specifically, I have 2 items. One brings up an item that we've discussed before, but I'd like to see in the record. On May 20th, 2021, according to a report by 1011 News Now, the LPD had a teenager stealing a gun and shooting and killing the family cat. Now, there were obviously many laws violated here, including the fact that 15-year-olds can't have a gun unless they're being out of range, supervised by an adult. But the question we get back to, and the question that me and others have raised, is why do we have unsecured guns in our neighborhood? Why do we have children with guns? What are the consequences of that choice? Now, considering this is the only information I have from this report, I do not absolutely know that gun was unsecured. It is possible this 15-year-old is also a lockpick who did some ninja stuff to get into a gun safe. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He's a 15-year-old. We're not going to know his name. I approve of all that rule. But there's the possibility, let's say Occam's razor says that if a 15-year-old gets a gun, the most likely possibility is it was an unsecured gun. People have brought this to you in the council. You've gotten messages on this matter before. You will get messages again. Other people will have different points of view. We'll have our great public debate, and we'll see what happens. Second issue. It's 5:30. Anybody can come into the council session they want. People are here. And again, it's 5:30. I've said this again before, and I'm going to say it again. I wish the council would strongly consider adding more evening meetings. I think there are a couple reasons it makes sense with the new composition of the council. If I understand all y'all's commitments, not everybody knows, so I'll just say again that this is a part-time gig. All y'all have, I've either done a great deal of public service and are now retired because of that service, or you all have full-time jobs. Most of the people in the city also have full-time jobs. I understand that having council meetings at 3 o'clock on Monday makes sense from a certain point of view. It makes sense that that's when you got the staff here. That's when you've always done it, which is often the way we do things. But the purpose of the council, in my mind, or one of the purposes, is to provide interaction. I think it is hard to argue that there's not more potential for interaction at 5:30 as opposed to 3. There might be other reasons this shouldn't be done. I'm not suggesting that you immediately adopt my crazy ideas right off the bat, but there could be some sort of outreach to see if there was widespread interest in this idea. If we could begin the discussion, I think this is a good time to reevaluate it because we're at the beginning of a new council. I think I'm out of time. I thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council at this time? Okay. Seeing
I move adjournment.
Second.
moved by Raybold, seconded by McGinnis. Remember the golden rule.
The rule? What?
To please do a roll call vote.
That would be a good thing. We remember the golden rule.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Vecchius?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes,
Motion carried 7-0.
we're adjourned.